Hello. Oh, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can.
Oh, I can hear you. Okay, good. You said hello and I heard nothing.
Morning, Ash.
Morning, all.
Good morning.
Morning,
Folks,
everybody.
here he is.
People are coming fast and furious.
Morning, good morning.
Morning, Paul.
How's everybody?
Good.
Sunday.
Good, good.
We have quorum, and here's our leader. And our co-leader. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. I just need to switch my camera.
No problem.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Hello.
I'm just pulling up my agenda here. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated.
That's my normal state, so don't you worry.
Mine too, but it looks like we have lots of people here. Happy August, everybody. I was on vacation for 2 weeks and am just getting back to emails today. So it is likely I am behind on everything. So I'll just put that out there. But if nobody minds, we'll go ahead and get started a little bit late, 11:02. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right. Are there any public comments? Any folks from the public that want to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll keep moving on. Would anybody like to move to approve the July 7th minutes or make any edits?
I will move to approve the July 7th minutes.
Thanks, Andrea.
I'll second.
Thanks, Bob. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? All right, moving forward, and I should pause and welcome Susan to our team. She was reelected or elected along with the folks who were reelected to the secretary position. She's replacing Phil, and we lost Phil for because we lost Heinsberg, but it's so wonderful to have you join us, Susan. So welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome back, everybody else. It is so nice to be doing this again with you. So thanks for being here. The next piece is a discussion of legislative session funding approach. And Clayton, I know that you've had a little bit of thought on this, so it'll be interesting to discuss it. Let's go ahead and dive in.
So, first off, thanks everybody for meeting in August when we normally take the time off. I appreciate the extra volunteer hours for you. And so, thinking about the legislative session that's coming up and what we've experienced, or at least what I've experienced in my time here, and in looking at the funding gap that we have. I took a look at the previous study that was most recently done that consolidated input from other previous studies and to come up with different funding sources for public transit. And so when I there were some questions that came about because of the way I worded this topic. And so I apologize for some confusion. And so when I say that I'm going to talk about a 2026 funding approach, it's what I mean is that, do we want to look at an alternative funding arrangement for GMT in light of our fiscal crisis and in light of our past experience at the State House. And so I went through and I looked at the report. There were four, it was determined in January of 2024 that there was four sort of viable options for an alternative funding source for transit. And unfortunately, I think that, those sources really are no longer viable for a variety of reasons. And for two of those recommendations, the funding levels that would be generated really would be somewhat insignificant in the scale of the problem. And so I don't really see a benefit of spending our limited political capital to find a solution that, only gets us a few $100,000, and doesn't keep us from having to do additional further service reductions. And so I should mention that, is one of my goals also when thinking about a new funding plan is how we would be able to move forward without service reductions. So I sort of reversed engineered what I think would be viable, because I think that even though I love the notion of grassroots organizing, I love the notion of solutions coming from below and percolating up. I think our situation is one where we have to actually reverse engineer if we want to see progress. And to me, that starts with who would have to sign any legislation that would help us. And so that's with the governor. We know that he's been very consistent with no new taxes and fees. We know that he had a sort of significant legislative win with the makeup of the legislature during this past session, so that there is no longer an ability to override his veto, which does give him the ability to, sort of single-handedly stop anything that GMT were to propose. So I feel that, from the get-go, we need to consider something that he would be willing to support. I do think my hope is that the governor would see a distinction between a statewide new tax or fee and a local one where the individuals who are receiving the service are contributing towards the service. Looking at the next folks that we have to consider, with Chair Walker in the legislature, he is, certainly the most important person that we need to get on our side if we want to have a viable solution. He's repeated to me numerous times that he would not be able to get behind any legislation that gives the perception that rural taxpayers are paying for urban transit. And so again, I don't see a pathway for there to be a statewide transit funding solution, especially if it was seen as a bailout for GMT. And so again, I think that we need to listen to the feedback that he's provided and make sure that whatever we craft would meet his needs. Looking at our urban municipalities, we've heard very clearly from just about all of them that they are maxed out on their property tax assessments. It's the belief, I think, of the conventional wisdom for the Vermont politics that property taxes was, probably what led to the governor's success in the most recent election. And so not shockingly, we've heard from our municipal partners that that finding a funding solution for GMT that uses the existing assessment methodology just is not something that we can consider. So looking at those sort of constraints, this caused me to think about something that was not examined in the previous studies that I'm aware of, which would be looking at those communities that have already agreed to have an options tax, and to see if there would be an appetite for increasing that options tax to go towards urban public transit. I think that our urban area is, in my opinion, probably the only area where the density and frequency of transit would make sense for a property tax. I think that it would be hard to sell in other areas because it would have less, I think, applicability to the population in the community. And so the benefit that I see of this approach is that it would provide approximately $4 million worth of property tax relief to our urban communities, with our Burlington community getting about $2 million worth of relief, South Burlington about $650,000 worth of relief, and then lower for the other partners. Using a sales tax on folks in our urban area, I see as meeting Chair Walker's requirement, that it would not be a tax directly on his constituents. Perhaps it could be argued that his constituents travel to Burlington and would, be paying that additional amount. But I think that this would meet his litmus test. And then going to the governor, I think that the governor would probably be more likely to support legislation where the new fee was seen as voluntary. And that's one of the things that we will need to figure out moving forward. It will make this process messy, but I think that in order for us to have the buy-in of our partners, that we are going to probably want to follow a similar process that was done for consideration of the original options tax. And so I'm aware that a sales tax has certain political drawbacks, the first of which is that it tends to be regressive in nature. And so I suspect that some folks may have difficulty supporting a funding mechanism that may disproportionately impact lower income folks. I think that may actually be a selling point to some of GMT's critics in the past. So I think that that's something that we should probably, explore. And so what I wanted to do is to make sure that before I start having public discussions with legislators and municipalities about what this may look like, that you all are okay with me having those discussions, because this would be sort of a sea change direction in how we raise local match. When looking at what the potential outcome could be, if we were to, based on my ability to gather publicly available sales tax information, which, I'm a general manager, not a research statistician. So certainly we're going to need to have folks who are more data inclined to make sure that my assumptions are correct. But looking at what I could find on existing sales tax revenue for our 6 communities that do have the option tax, that we would be able to generate about $8 million worth of revenue for us. That's double the existing assessment revenue generation, and would fully cover the funding gap that we have to prevent additional service reductions. And so that's why, that's the benefit, because I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of what it is that we would be able to achieve if we went this route. One of the other benefits of this practice is that the options tax has traditionally been split between the municipality and the state, with 30% going to the state. That $8 million worth of revenue that we would generate already considers that 30% of the revenue would go to the state. So the state would generate about $3.6 million from this additional sales tax. And one of the things that I think could be appealing, especially to our transportation committee members, is that if the state were to use that 30% towards rural transit, what we would see is a solution that not only keeps service intact for urban, but would keep service intact for the foreseeable future in rural. So I just talked at you a lot for the past 10 minutes, and now that we've sort of set the stage, would like to hear the discussion from the group. And we have Chapin here because have talked with him previously about this as Burlington's being our largest provider, and also knowing the that the Burlington administration is likely to have a position on this. So I have included him early in the discussions and asked him to be here today. So back to you, Amy.
All right, let's open it up. Who wants to start? I suspect Chapin has some thoughts. Austin, I suspect you have some thoughts too, and then others as well. But I don't know who wants to start. Ooh, Susan wants to start. Go for it.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question to start with, and that is, are you talking about asking towns to commit a proportion of the existing LOT that they're collecting for the purposes of transit? Or are you talking about asking them to increase their LOT or creating a new one that would specifically be used for GMT transit?
Great question. This would be an increase. So those places that currently have a 7% sales tax rate would have a 7.5% sales tax rate.
So it's 0.5%.
Yes, I'm sorry for forgetting to include that note.
Okay, and then my second question to start with is, can you list the communities that already have the LOT? I know that Dublin is one.
And so that would be all of our members except for Milton and the town of Essex.
Okay,
And so that would be Shelburne, Burlington, South Burlington, Williston, Essex Junction, and Winooski.
and then, so would each community, would this have to go to like public vote, like be put on a ballot? Or
And-
would, I'm sorry?
So if we were to follow the model of the current option tax, then each community would be able to vote on it. That creates some potential issues, but at the same time, if we were to sort of impose this, I think it would create other issues. And I think one of the things that we obviously have to iron out a lot of details, and we're not really in the details portion of thinking about this. But one of the things that I could perhaps see is giving towns the option of, all right, you can continue to contribute using the previous assessment methodology, or you can contribute using the sales tax. And but the reality is that in order for us to maintain the service at our current levels, those assessments using the property tax methodology are going to keep going up significantly, and so that this would give municipalities an opportunity to go in a different direction.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I did share this with Austin at our retreat, was the idea of doing a property tax increase that communities would vote on that would be dedicated towards transit. And I'm thinking of the Pennies for Paths initiative in South Burlington, where they did something like that, put it on the ballot for people to commit to a penny on the tax rate that would be dedicated for the use of walking and biking infrastructure in the community. And that way we're developing an approach where everybody, and we can set what that rate is, obviously based on what our needs are. And so we get that buy-in from the community in a way that our current municipal assessment methodology does not really allow us to, or is not being perceived as something that is to the benefit of the entire transit system. I think they consider it more in terms of what they get out of it. So I don't know, it seems similar to this idea, just using the property tax, and I think that we've seen some appetite in certain communities for doing those kinds of things. I know in Shelburne, they just doubled the amount on their ballot of asking the community for dedicated funding for open space conservation. And that's been really well received, and the community has been really open to seeing some major increases in dedicated funding for that. So I just wonder if that's another approach that should be on the table.
And I'd certainly be happy to look at that. I think that, one of the questions that I would have just off the bat is that what would be reasonably expected for new revenue from that? And so the benefit I would see of that approach is that we would keep our existing $4 million worth of revenue generated from property tax, and that whatever this would generate would, sort of go on top of that. So I'll be happy to, to look at that as an option to see um, whether that should either be complementary or a replacement to the sales tax approach.
I mean, I think it would be basically having to back calculate what that increased tax rate would be, and then just applying it uniformly across our members in the county, and see what that number looks like and whether there's any political will. And I think thinking a few steps further, being prepared for possibly a question of, well, if we only get support from some municipalities, not all of them, for this new funding approach, whichever way it is,
Yep.
what is our appetite and willingness to kind of work with those communities who really want us there, create the kind of transit system we know we need in order to increase ridership, and then build out from there. If that's an option, I know that's getting way ahead of the whole conversation, but could be another way about what we need.
I definitely think that you're identifying, though, a key issue, which is that unless we sort of force municipalities' hands, we're likely to end up in a situation where, at least in the short term, some or some municipalities have opted in, and others, have not yet opted in. And how would we do that? Because certainly, I could see people having feelings about one community contributing, millions of dollars, and others choosing not to, and how that may play out poorly.
Well, I think that's why thinking about it more on a per capita basis might be a helpful way to reframe that. And again, as you know, I'm spending a lot of time in Ann Arbor, so I've started to look into the Ann Arbor Area Transit Authority, which is also an authority that, has an urban kind of mission, but it also has to address the needs of their rural communities. So the county is about the same size as Chittenden County, Washtenaw County here. And so, and that's what they do here, is just a millage rate for every resident in the county, which is well supported. But there's that culture that transit is important for the county as a whole, and they've gotten away from thinking about it from a town by town benefit. So,
and I think if Vermont had county government, county government would be where we would live, and how we would seek funding. But in the absence of that, we kind of have the state and local.
Let me hear what Austin has to share, because we have a few other things that might involve our brains later in the meeting as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't like this really. So first, changes happened this legislative session around the local option tax. It was previously a 30% withholding that the state would take from a local option tax. And that would go into a special fund for pilot or payment in lieu of taxes. And pilot was running a very large surplus and is continually running a large surplus. So the League of Cities and Towns, as well as the regional chamber, my day job, and others pushed for the percentage to be moved from 30 to 25%. And that's actually going to save all of the all of the municipalities you listed in our region quite a bit, millions of dollars, frankly, in terms of what they send to the state. They'll actually go to hold that. We've recommended, and again, speaking my day job hat on, we've recommended to a lot of municipalities to plan on, we've indicated where we think they should spend that money. It might be worth it just actually to go to municipalities and say, we know you have this new withholding that is, we know you got 5% back of your local options tax. That might be helpful. But, pilot, there will be other changes around pilot and local options because frankly, it's still going to generate some surplus. Some of that's been used for FEMA buyouts and flood relief, but there is still some money sitting there. So that's just kind of context of like what's already happened with local options and pilot recently. I think the thing you're going to see is there's going to be a lot of pushback on increasing local option sales taxes, even if it is 0.5%. Most people see, and they're right, that the sales tax is one of the most regressive taxes we have. It is exempted on, for example, clothing up to about $125 or anything that's not luxury. It's exempted on stupid other things like candy and things like that. But it is a regressive tax, and folks will push back on it. I think folks will also push back that it doesn't have nexus to the actual activity. Whereas I understand that the transportation committees don't like they don't want to tax parcels or other things, but frankly those are things using our transportation infrastructure and the road, and so you go to other committees or other communities and say we want to tax sales to fund transit, they're not going to see a nexus, and they're not going to care that the transportation committee doesn't want transportation related activities taxed more to cover transit costs. So we might have dodged like two committees who, if we go this route, who don't like, or are fine with this version, but we've opened ourselves up to every other committee and every other community targeting it. I also think that the decentralized issue, I mean, having to then go to every single community and ask them to create this new local options tax just puts us back where we are, and one of the biggest failures of the system we have. We need to get to some way where we're not asking local communities, we're just assessing local communities who are benefiting from the service, because I think otherwise we just run into this tragedy of the commons problem where folks are going to argue about the methodology and who gets how much for what. So I just don't think that. And then the other thing I would say is if there was a 0.5% sales tax, I would say exempt it from the pilot withholding and don't send 25% to the state. And certainly it's not going to be sold very well to folks if they understand that, 25% of that 0.5% sales tax they pay is not benefiting the state. Already, Vermont, the Chittenden County area has 25% of the state's population roughly, and is providing about 35 to 36% of the revenue from all the different taxes. So, further negotiating away more of the Chittenden County revenue to fund services in another part of the state I don't think it's going to be a popular sell to a lot of people.
Unfortunately, I think the reality is that 12 months from now, we're going to be empty-handed because everybody, including our advocates, has been principled. I mean, I understand that a sales tax is regressive. Who does public transit serve, and how much service is going to be cut if we don't consider a regressive tax? I think that we could make the argument much easier that transit is related to sales tax than we can assessments.
I'm also thinking about how long this is going to take. So best case scenario, let's do the math. We're looking at passage of legislation effective July 2026 that creates the authority for the local municipalities to create a local option tax. Then you have to go through the whole process of moving that through local municipal government, every local level, which is going to take a lot of staff time. Then you're going to have the push the lead up to town meeting when folks will actually vote on this to make their charter change, at which point that'll happen. And then you'll have to bring those charter changes back to the legislature to get passed to be effective upon signing or roughly, July 1, 2027. So July 1, 2027 is when you actually you actually have the legal ability to implement. And then you're looking at collection, which is an outside lag time, which pushes you out into 2028 before you actually see any revenue from this.
Yep. But it also creates a situation where bridge funding will be much more attractive because we'll have a pathway that will actually get us to where we need. We're not going to get additional bridge funding right now because the state sees it's a bridge to nowhere.
I appreciate that. And I think I understand where you're coming from. I just think I don't know if sales is the best path.
It seems like the property tax, dedicated property tax, gives us the same thing. We have to go through the same process without having to go through the LOT approval process on top of it. So putting that out there.
Okay. Chapin, were you going to join in on the conversation? You look like you had a thought.
Happy to ask some questions. I appreciate us finding time to talk about the long-term financing here. We've had 4 studies in my tenure, all recommending different approaches, and we've not been able to substantively move off the assessment challenge. So Clayton, in your conversation, you've talked about a town-by-town approach. Is there any kind of approach at a regional sales tax that would be imposed and not voted on? Is there any appetite at the state for looking at this as a regional system? Part of my concern is Colchester is not a member. They have a lion's share of large retail environments. Burlington politically is going to have a hard time swallowing to increase our local option tax if it further hurts our retail environment vis-a-vis other communities who aren't members, who are then going to get more of our retail business.
So I'm not aware of a regional system that would be able to have the sales tax imposed, throughout, say, maybe our urban zone or across the government or across Chittenden County. And so if we had that type of system, then absolutely that would be the approach, but I just don't see that existing. And I do suspect that if we, went to the state and did an approach that would force our member municipalities to go in this direction, I just think that would ultimately, sour our relationship with those municipalities. I mean, maybe that's what needs to happen. But at least at this approach, and especially as I have my initial conversations with the municipalities, I don't want to start off by saying that this is the direction I'm going to force them to take.
And one question, just in terms of understanding variability, sales tax, the challenge is it's much more prone to swings in economic condition. Property tax is much more dependable. We've been challenged here with how do we solidify our funding base? So how would this approach tying us to a more volatile funding mechanism enable our solidity?
Well, I think that it has the benefit of being more inflation proof. And so that's the good, and the bad is that's more volatile. And so unlike a lot of the other proposals that had flat rates, say like $10 for a car registration fee, hey, that first year that $10 is going to go far, and then each subsequent year it's going to get a little bit less meaningful, and then we'll have to go through the political hurdle of raising that fee again at an appropriate time. So I think that I'm not aware of any of the solutions being recommended that would not have similar, drawbacks. To me, the thing that is the most important is not going into a scenario where we know off the bat that inflation is going to diminish this over time, because the real reason why we're here is because revenue has grown slower than costs.
All right, we do have other things that we need to talk about. So Paul and then Austin, and I think that we need to kind of come to a resolution for today, and then move on to the other two important topics. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, certainly, Green Mountain Transit has been operating in the red for 10 years or more, and it's not getting any better. And we've been talking about alternate forms of revenue for all that time, and we've gone nowhere. So I think from a point of view of having Clayton get out there and start turning over some stones and seeing what occurs, I think it's worth doing. I am concerned that we get too far down this road, but I think as long as we can get involved with, talk to communities, talk to legislators, get some indication that some sort of a sales tax moving forward might have legs, then I would be supportive of Clayton moving forward. It also occurs to me that at this point in time, we talk to communities that, well, we have the option sales tax. Hopefully you might support us on that, but if you don't, then we have the right to request you to support our budget. So your assessments are going to go up by 25% next year, or whatever the number is, as we have the right to do that by charter, so we can do it. So I think, you know, there, you wouldn't say it quite as crudely as that, but I think the point being that there's an alternative to not raising any money through sales tax, not just increase the assessment.
Yeah. And to get to your point, Paul, that means that Burlington will be paying a lot more, and I don't see Chapin being able to carry that bill, but it could be wrong.
All right, Austin, final word.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with you, Clayton, around just finding a path forward. I just think I understand that that sales tax looks like a cornucopia faced with, you know, the document you provide us with the political feasibility. I'm here to tell you I work in this space. It's more complicated, it's more difficult, it's more politically you know, difficult. And then to Chapin's points, it's very volatile and fickle once you get there. So I can't say I support the idea of pursuing a local option tax. I like the idea of getting out and working with folks, but I do think we need to find something novel that is a regional assessment, a truly regional assessment, bypasses having to go community to community. And you know, I think looking at other special districts that we have in our state that have assessment authority and seeing where they might be doing better could be helpful.
Amy, can I try one closeout for you?
Please go ahead, Bob.
So
yeah.
I thank Clayton for trying to come up with something different. I think from a philosophical standpoint, none of the options we ever come up with is going to work. We know that. This one is something new. I think from a psychological dialogue with people to come up with something just to help the dialogue take place and go on again, at least gives them the opportunity of, okay, we know this isn't great. Here's one we've got. Tell us something else you think will work. Just to keep the dialogue going, recognizing that none of them are going to win until we find something that works. So it's not an answer, but it's a good discussion to have. Okay.
Yeah, I think that sums up a lot of the conversation we just had. So worth more thought and poking at it a little bit and seeing if something else, you know, maybe what Susan was talking about or some sort of regional approach might come out of it. Clayton, does that help you?
It does. And so Susan, if I reach out to Matt, he can provide me the information on the pennies for, or who would be a good person to learn from?
The Penny for Paths initiative took place in South Burlington.
Okay, I'll talk to Jessica.
And then I can, and then I would talk to Matt about how the community has, over the past couple of years, continued to increase the ask to the community, to Shelburne, for dedicated funding for their open space conservation account. So I think there's just been some surprise, you know, the same conversation, we're asking too much of the community, they're going to say no. But surprisingly, a lot of people really care about open space, and it showed up in the, at the ballot. So I just wonder if public transit might have that same kind of support, and then work with the communities that want to work with us and give them the service that they want and need. And like I said, make it a flat per capita rate. And anyways, that was my idea for us all to think about.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay. We'll keep poking at it and pulling the threads and see where it takes us. And there's lots of great ideas in here to poke at. So the next item on our agenda is a review of health insurance changes. Go for it.
And so one of the things that I wanted to make sure that the board is aware of is that our contracts with the Teamsters allow us to have cost controls over our health insurance premiums that most employers don't have. And so I know that one of the things that frequently gets people's attention is, when they hear that we have 100%, coverage of health insurance premiums. But in exchange for that generosity, we also have something that I think most organizations would love to have, which is funding predictability for health insurance. And so that we know that our health insurance premiums for fiscal year, or not fiscal year, but for the 2026 calendar year, are not going to go up more than 6%. We know that for 2027, 28, and 29, we know that they're not going to go up more than 8%. That's a luxury that most organizations don't have. The downside is that the way the Teamsters keep the costs low is by making the plans more cost efficient. And so we have been lucky until now that they have not had to change our coverage, but that is changing pretty significantly this year. One of the things that I'm going to do is pull up a sheet so that you can see the coverage differences. And I'm bringing this to your attention because we have a lot of folks who are on both the admin side of the house and the union side of the house that are concerned about this. And so you should be seeing now Allegiant Care GMT changes 2026. Everybody got that?
Yes, and thank you for making it bigger.
And so this NGFA7 is our current coverage, and this Anthem PP02 is what is going to be moving to. And I just want to highlight this area in here where you can see that the out-of-pocket expenses for coinsurance is doubling. And the things that are used for coinsurance have increased significantly. And so you can see that, for example, I think the most obvious is the hospital stay, which, let's see, I've lost it. I'm not used to seeing it. So where you have, say, like a hospital, oh, there we go, hospital stay, facility and physician fees, where it used to be a $500 copay, now it's 20%. And so I'm sure that if anyone ended up with a hospital stay, that, they would probably get to their out-of-pocket limit, very quickly, and those folks would suddenly have a significant out-of-pocket expense. And so I'm not asking the board to do anything at this time. This is something that was built in, that we've known, sort of for years that this could happen, and now it's happening. But I just want to know that there is discontent from folks. I'm going to stop sharing. And or did it stop sharing already?
No, it's still sharing.
All right. Stop. Oh, there we go. It said that I was paused in sharing. I was like, and so just want you all aware of this. And Paul?
Yeah, this is a new occurrence, but has anybody had a chance to check it now with MVP or Blue Cross Blue Shield to see how close they are to similar coverage with premium?
I think that we will, we still have it in our contract that we get our care from Allegiant Care. We do have the ability to, when both the company agree, we can negotiate for a different provider. And so I think it does make sense that between now and November, we would want to make sure that we can't get more affordable coverage from someplace else.
Forgive me, I just need to step away for 1 second.
Doggy duties. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okie doke. It, a lot of this is somewhat new information to employees. And so this is really taken a lot of, or there's been a lot of concern over the past few weeks. We'll see if that concern continues to be the case, but I would imagine that that we'll continue to be hearing this, probably for the foreseeable future. And Amy, I think that we may be ready for our executive session unless you have a question or other folks want to dive in.
I am ready for that. Sorry, I had to step away.
No problem.
All right, so our next item is to discuss labor relations, and we'll need to find to have a vote on a finding. Someone want to make that motion, which Clayton happily sent ahead in the read ahead.
I can read that. So I introduce a motion finding that premature general public knowledge of our bargaining position for our next urban operators agreement would place GMT at a substantial disadvantage.
So moved.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Thanks, Paul and Susan. A nice effort, Bob. Any further conversation on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so the next part is a motion to enter the executive session.
Yep. And so I included a sample motion there as well. And so I introduced a motion to enter executive session, discuss labor negotiations to include Clayton Clark, Jimmy Johnson, Nicholas Foss, and Dan Courier from VTrans.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Andrea.
Second.
All right, Bob, you're the one this time. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so we're going to enter executive session at 11:48 and stop the recording and just wait for folks to hop off who are not part of that group. Action taken at 12:02.
If I
our
could
last
just
bit.
add, if I could
Yes.
just add that the motion to exit executive session was from Paul and the second was from Susan.
Thank you. And we're back at 12:02. Thank you. Commissioner comments. I do have one. I know Nick reached out. He needs all of our in-person signatures. And so if he hasn't connected with you or you haven't connected with him, please reach out to coordinate a time when you can run over or meet somewhere and sign a piece of paper. Nick, I found out I have a meeting down in your neck of the woods this afternoon. So if you're there after 2:30, could I swing by and put my signature?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to come to you folks if needed as well. So thank you for that.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'll just say, apologize. I was a little bit quiet on this meeting because I had was kiddo wrangling, but I lost the. But I appreciate everyone's. I appreciate the creative thinking and the hard work towards finding a sustainable path forward. As always.
Andrea, I love your hat.
Thank you. Up to the green.
All right. If no other thoughts or comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Paul, you seem ready. Do you want to do it again?
I was gonna say maybe somebody else could do it, but I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Andrea. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. We are adjourned. Nick, I will connect with you a little bit after 2:30. Thanks everyone for being here, and enjoy this sunny day, which is hot.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.